Hello, we are now taking some time to talk about valuation and market analysis. Easily put, appraisals. So salesperson and broker together, you guys will probably have about 6 test questions on this topic. And the first part of the outline is just the purpose and use of appraisals for valuation. So let's back up to when an appraisal is really used. Again, this is used to validate the purchase price a borrower is paying, has agreed to in the contract for the bank, so that they're not over investing in something that maybe isn't worth that value. So an appraisal, again, is used by a lender to validate that the value of the agreed purchase price is actually on target. And if for some reason that appraisal comes in less, they can only lend money up to that appraised value. If the appraisal comes in at or above, then of course they can use the sales price. So this is, again, is really used as security for the bank to make their investment, but the borrower or buyer pays for it, okay? Now, I think a really good definition for you to know for an appraisal is an estimate, or it's an opinion of market value. The key is market value. General steps in the appraisal process, there is several, but I think what's probably most important for you to know is the first one and the last one. And the first process in the appraisal is the step of defining the problem. And that is, why are we even doing an appraisal? If we've got a 3-bedroom bungalow that sits on 2 acres, is that borrower purchasing it to be a 3-bedroom bungalow on 2 acres, or is it a property that's surrounded by commercial property, and we're actually buying that property to tear it down and use those acres to put up more commercial property? So why is this being purchased? Define the problem. Then I think the last step is probably the most important. We're going to go through 3 different types of appraisals that the industry uses to come up with their price valuations and their market analysis. And the last step that they must do is a process called reconciliation. And that is taking their data and deciding which part of it has the most influence that would lead it to be most accurate data. So of all the data that they accumulated and maybe the multi ways that they did their valuation, which one is most likely to hold the most truth? Okay. Effects of economic principles and property characteristics. There are many of these. Many of these, I think there's 9 principles of value for you to go through. These are going to be things like conformity, like a neighborhood where the homes are all similar, typically hold their value than that one house that's maybe super unique. Another good one is going to be the idea that you can over improve your property based on the average value of your neighborhood. Another good one is supply and demand. And we're obviously working through that one fiercely right now. Demand is high, inventory is low, so prices go up. But we've also been through a market where demand has been low, inventory has been super high, and prices have gone down. That's what we call a buyer's market versus the seller's market I mentioned previous to that. I think another good one for you to know is the idea of anticipation. And this says that if we are anticipating an event to happen or not happen, how that can affect the values of property. So I've got a seller that calls me and says, Amy, I've heard that the local manufacturing plant is going to close its doors and lay off 250 employees. And I want to know, when's the best time to sell my property? And the answer, in my opinion, would be now, would be the best answer. Because if you wait and that factory does close, then everyone's going to sell their properties, okay? And you're going to have little demand, but a lot of inventory, okay? So it's the idea of anticipation. The sales or market comparison approach. The sales comparison approach works really well when we've got a plethora of properties to pull as samples of past sold data. It works really well for residential properties because we've got several homes in a neighborhood that usually we can tap into and see what they recently sold for, and then determine a most likely sales price for our subject property, which is the home that we're looking to sell. Now, there's a great chart that can be used to put all the amenities and characteristics of a property and compare the subject to 2 or 3 comparable solds, okay? Now, when you make the adjustments, though, so that we start to have the subject, all of the comparable properties look most like the subject property, you're gonna make those adjustments to the comparable sold properties. And here's an example. A 3-bedroom home sells for $180,000. What is the most likely sales price for a 2-bedroom with fireplace if we knew the 3rd bedroom was worth $5,000 and a fireplace is worth $2,000? So we want to take that sold property at 180. We want to make it look like a 2-bedroom. That's the subject property. So we got to get rid of a bedroom. That's $5,000. Now we're at 175. The subject, though, has a fireplace that the comparable didn't. So we need to add in a fireplace, which is worth $2,000. So our most likely sales property or price would be 177. Okay, that is where on the exam you're going to feel like you have more math than what's coming up on the outline. And really, that's an appraisal question. Another good one about that sales comparison approach with the uniform appraisers form that they fill out is when you're pulling comparable data, it needs to be within the same neighborhood within 12 months. And a few other options you might have are a foreclosure, which is not a good comparable for a resale because it's kind of a distressed property. Another one might be a transaction that happened between family members. That would not be a good comparable because that might have been sold at a family discount. We don't know. A neighboring community with the exact property within 6 months. No, we don't want to leave the neighborhood. So the best answer to pick the best comparable properties to establish that price is same neighborhood within 12 months, okay? Your cost approach. This is going to be really good for your unique properties that there's nothing else out there like it. So big commercial buildings, for example, we all know Hy-Vee here in Iowa. There's not very many of those buildings that go for sale. And they were uniquely designed to be Hy-Vee grocery stores, which as far as I know, Hy-Vee even has a patent on their layout and refrigeration systems, etc. They very well could, I don't know. That would be a cost approach. And the appraisal way of doing the cost approach is you strip the property down to bare land and you figure the value of just the bare lot. Now take that number and put it off to the side. Then you're going to go and construct the property brand new. What's that price to build it brand new? Then you're going to use 3 types of depreciation to reduce from that new cost to make it most like what it would be worth today. So depreciation can happen from physical obsolescence, functional obsolescence, or external matters. So physical is going to be something that's a repair. You're probably going to get your money back for it. It's going to be basic wear and tear, carpet, paint, updates of that nature. Functional obsolescence is going to say there's something about this property that is so outdated or so unfriendly to building standards now, you're going to spend more money to repair it than what you're going to get a return in your value, basically. Okay. I'll give you a residential example of that. Would be, does a 3-bedroom home function the same as a 3-bedroom home where you've got to walk through 1 bedroom to get to the next, right? Those aren't now comparable properties, okay? Because one has a function, question mark. The third type is external. And this is going to be something outside of the property that affects its value. Maybe an intersection that's really hard to get in and out of. Maybe it's the retina burning house, orange house across the street, but it's just so much color that it actually ends up affecting the value of the property that you're looking to price, okay? So what you would do is take new construction minus that depreciation, and then that land value that we have off to the side, now we're going to add that back in, and that's a most likely sales price. Income analysis approach is going to be anything that's used for a rental. This could be commercial, it could be industrial, anywhere where we're using future rent to establish today's value. Now, I don't know that you all will have this, but just in case, this is where we're going to talk about capitalization rates. And that is the rate of return that the investor is going to seek. So there's a couple of ways to get to that income with a few different formulas. Now, this is really sloppy, but this is my notes. And I know it's backwards to you, but it's income over rate times value. There's a fancy name to this. I learned it from my friend Don Wagner, who is one of our infamous trainers here in Iowa. But it's income over rate and value. And what this says, again, I'm sorry, this is backwards for you, is if you want to get the rate, you take income divided by value, that gets the rate. If you want value, you take income divided by rate, you get value. Then if you take value times rate, you get income. I don't know that you all are going to need this for the exam, but that might be, I call it the Wagner Chi because that's what Don called it when he taught it to me. But I will just say that might be something that when you go in and you write your 640 and your 43,560, maybe write that T at the top with income over rate times value. That way, if you need it, you got that formula. I've not really needed that when I've audited the exam, but it's got to be out there for somebody. I maybe have just gotten lucky. Okay. Now, we've talked a little bit about selecting and adjusting properties. That was that idea under the sales comparison approach of adjusting the comparable properties to look most like the subject. That is appraisals. Next up, we will have financing.